Okay, I think we've been pretty steady here at the number of folks that have joined, so we'll go ahead and kick things off. So once again, thank you everyone for joining this afternoon, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. And today's pretty exciting topic that's top of mind for a lot of customers is automation. So we're going to be doing an automation session on automating big IP configurations with Ansible Tower. So we have two solutions engineers that'll be doing the presentation today. Young Lam and Jermaine Mack are both SEs on the US federal team. And we're very honored to have them. And with that, I will turn it over to you guys. Oh, and one more thing too, please. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. Myself and Ryan Johnson will be monitoring the Q&A. There will be a chance at the end of the presentation to ask. We'll pick certain questions and answer them, and then we'll monitor the chat as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay. Thank you.
Pick easy questions, right?
Yeah, make them easy questions.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Young Lam. I'm with F5 for about 8 years, and currently I'm supporting our federal customer, mainly the IRS, Social Security, and the U.S. Postal.
I'm Jermaine Mack, SE for the Fed team. I've been with F5 for almost 3 years now, and I actually think I have a customer out there in the audience. And looking forward to having a great presentation here. All right, go ahead, Young.
All right. So I think we got put together a pretty concise agenda for you guys today. So first, we're gonna review the previous topic mainly. So if some of you may have missed some of the previous topics, we'll have them here listed, and just let us know which one that you want to look it over. We have them all recorded, and we'll go to send you the link. We'll cover a couple of general concept terminologies that you often hear or run into, automation, and certainly with in our discussion today, as well as going through of any of our F5 labs. We'll give a quick overview on why F5 and Ansible works well together. Then we're going to kind of look more into the F5 Automation Toolchain. We talk about the individual components. And much of our demos today is going to demo some of those capabilities. I'll list out a couple of automation tools that I think that can be very helpful. They're mainly used in industry, and we also use them quite often at F5, with some of our solution architects. We'll list the surveys, and then we'll cover some of the upcoming topics for you guys. And then Jermaine's going to take us home through his demo. Okay, so we started off with also automation, and for multi-cloud, we took a couple of weeks break for some of our internal work that we have to do on some other thing, and we resume on a couple of security topics, right? Advanced WAF versus what ASM and what the differences are. Then OAuth's top 10. Bot detection capabilities on the big IP, and we talked about Shape. Shape is F5 latest acquisitions. They are a security company. And then last week we talked about F5 in the AWS cloud. So if you miss any of those topics and you want to review them, we have recordings for them. So please let us know, and we'll be able to send you out the link individually. All right, first, let's talk about automation. Why is that important? We look at the market trends lately. Everything is about the speed of the software. Everything is about the apps. And actually, this slide reminds me of if you guys don't mind, let me share a quick story of my recent camping trips with my 4 and 6-year-old, right? And we were pretty out there, far out from civilization. I call it our civilization distancing trip, right? And the only entertainment we could get out there was broadcast TV because we didn't have, internet or signal or anything. So, so I'm going to the channel and like Disney Cars was on, right? And so it's like my 4 and 6-year-old was watching it, and 5 minutes into it, they was like, "Hey, Daddy, this is not that clear. Can we make it more clear?" I was like, "I'm sorry, kids. This broadcast TV. This is what we're gonna get." Right? And then, like 5 more minutes into it, they're like, "Can we change to Cars 2 now? We saw this one like many times already." I was like, "Sorry, kids. This broadcast TV. I can't, change it." I was like, "Well, just get a broadcast TV app and change it to Cars 2." like, oh well, that's not gonna happen. So sometimes, seeing the world through the views of these like 4 and 6-year-old kind of remind me that what they see is probably closer to reality than me, right? Because I mean, I grew up with broadcast TV, so I'm kind of like okay with it. But it's just like we're now, the customer, the end user's behavior is changing, expectations are changing. Everything needs to be on demand. It has to be fast, right? So it's all about in the software and the applications that's going out to the customer, right? With these changes, the business has to change. The business model has to change to adapt to these changing expectations from our customers. So how can automation help to meet these changes? And these are just a couple of the use cases, right? Not all of them, right? Number one that we're seeing very often is the use case in multi-cloud, right? For an agency that's looking to adopt multi-cloud, and that's, I'd say, the majority of them now are. How do you quickly deploy out security policies, applications, metrics out consistently across the multi-cloud, right? And the only real way to do that is through automation and orchestration, right? The automation tools also empower the DevOps team, right, to do what they do. These DevOps is, not relying on, the UI to click and point and do things. So they need lots and lots of APIs capabilities, right? Analytics and securities. How do we better utilize telemetry, analytics data, changing in security events, right? How do we observe all these changes and then roll out new policies, right, to either defend our network or to better optimize the user experience?
Hey, Young, I'd like to jump in here for just a second.
Yes.
With the security and automation, a number of customers I work with are very security conscious, and most customers are. In that, the security team may have a set of policies that they want deployed with an application. This could be a part of this automated delivery where we send out the known good security policies, the standard that's tied into the delivery of an application. So then you can have a repeatable pattern that may reduce the requirements and time to deliver a secure application because we know what controls are applied to this application.
Right. You can also use it to enforce securities, right? So you want to roll out an application without applying a standard set of policies on it, right? And we want to make that very, very easy too, right? So not, security is a different set of skills and it's highly demanded. Not everybody fully understands security. So we can make it a way to easy and secure for the apps owner. That's also us. Right. Just a couple term and concepts here that I just want to cover quick. Ansible is An automation platform that used to be a standalone company, but was purchased by Red Hat. Right. So that is the core engine, right? And AWX is an open source tool that present a graphical interface to the end users to use, right? So that would be a open source free tool. And then Tower is also a graphical interface that's derived from AWX. The difference being Tower is a supported commercial product, and it is something that's paid for by the customer, right? So one is free and one is paid for. And then one of the building block for Ansible is something called modules, right? Modules are just standalone repeatable scripts written by the vendor, right? So Ansible doesn't write the module, but the vendor, like an F5, like F5 will write module. Module does a set of related tasks, right? So it's pretty specific, right? Collection is it's a all in a package kind of download, right? So that would include all the modules, all the roles and playbooks, everything together to come down. So that gives you the ability to do something at a much higher level. So let me give you an analogy. So just think of module as like the dough, the cheese, and the tomato sauce, right? And like a menu of pizza and pasta, right? Certainly, if you can build a pizza by going shopping for cheese and tomato sauce, and build your own pizza. But sometimes it's just easier to just order the pizza by itself. Right? Galaxy is a website, a resource that you go to download these modules and collections. So it's a free community type of website. And then the Automation Hub is is a pay for subscription supported by Red Hat, and it is also derived from Galaxy, right? The only difference is it's what you download in Hub is fully tested and supported by Red Hat. So those are things related to Ansible. Second item here, idempotency and atomic. So idempotency is the concept where when a client makes a call, to a system, right? 1 time, 10 times, or 100 times, every call result in give you the same result, right? So idempotency. And then atomic is an all or nothing result. Right? It's either success or fail. So if you request an operation from the system, and that operation may contain, let's say, 10 tasks, right? And if 5 of them pass and then 5 of them fail, you don't leave yourself in a sort of like an unknown limbo state, right? So if it could be that it either has to the operation succeeded, or the operation failed with no apparent changes to the end system. So that is atomic. Next we'll have imperative versus declarative. And you're gonna hear this talked about pretty often in F5. Imperative is the user has to tell the system how to do something, right? Declarative is just the user telling the system what they want as a result, right? Let me, if you don't mind, let me go back to my children here. I think this is gonna get a good idea what this means. Like, so I can only the children can only give declarative calls to me, right? I mean, for them it's like, Daddy, I want some mac and cheese for lunch, right? And that's what they expect to get. Me, on the other hand, I got to give them imperative command, right? It's like, so after they eat, then I have to tell them, hey, put the dishes in the sink, pick up the crumbs on the floor, you know, go clean the table, go wash your hands, right? So I couldn't just tell them like, hey, go clean up after yourself. And all they probably do is just like pat their butt and just like leave and go play and leave me with a mess, right? So that's imperative versus declarative. So next we have source code management, and you're gonna hear source of truth also often used here at F5. And essentially it's just a repository to store all your codes, right? And be able to manage and have a version control to them. And this is where the source of truth is, which is the ultimate place where your configuration should live, right? There's no other question on, hey, is this configuration on the box is the right configuration, or is this configuration on this other box is the right configuration? There should only be one place, right? One point of entry to edit configuration or codes, right? I kind of blend the two together, which leads me to number 5, infrastructure as code. This is the idea where you, if you can store all your devices, your appliance configuration in a repository, and if you can treat it like code, right, then you can put a version control on them. And this way, then you can be easy like roll back, right? So if you you did an upgrade, you made some changes, it didn't work, you would roll back to the previous version, so you add a known state. Okay, so
the spot, Young, are you the imperative source of truth for Ansible?
Well, I like to think I'm the source of truth in the house, but my wife, I'm only saying that because my wife's not here.
Well, I'll jump in here real quick. The whole source of truth and infrastructure as code, what the other interesting thing that we see customers use it for is to document the state of your network. So with, if you have a, configuration for not only your F5 devices, but any other networking devices in your environment, and you use Ansible to control the configuration of that device, if you, are ever audited, or you need to, somehow demonstrate for some kind of compliance or governance purposes what the configuration of your network is. I mean, how many of you, right now can say, hey, I know what the state of my network is. I know what the configs are off of every single one of my boxes in my network. Probably not. So it's just another way of, providing, kind of a repository of configurations that you can go back to and reference.
I'll balance that against, so we have the ability to save configurations, archive those configurations in the box, and store them in another location. But with that archive config, we don't have the ease of just manipulating the data and sending it back, right? Versus having it in a repository where we can make a change and then push that out to the devices, right? That's the benefit of putting it in a repository. You can make a change, and you can have a revision control of that change in your repository, and then get pushed out through your Ansible or whatever, through the automation system. So that's the strength of infrastructure as code. Back to you, Young.
All right. So now, we talked about Ansible is nice automation platforms, but that's only work if the appliance itself has some tools to work with it, right? So let me cover some of the automation tools available on the F5 platforms. Collectively, we call them as the Automation Toolchain. Right? So these are a set of tools, free to use, comes with our product. So these are not paid for. These are available for you to use today. Now, if anyone's been interested in DevOps and trying to understand the methodology, you've probably seen variation of this diagram thousands of times. But what's interesting about this diagram is, they put in the term DevOps as something like, just that it works out there, but what's missing in a lot of these discussions is like the appliance or the network devices, the operation of those things, right? It's not clearly defined in here. Right. So we look at it a little bit more closely on the life cycle of a typical network appliance, right? So we're talking about like a physical device, right? You get a appliance and unbox it, right? Plug in a power supply, plug in the network cable and console cable, whatever, and then you turn it on, right? So once it's on, then you have to go in there, maybe console in there, give it some, managed IP address, and maybe put them, if it, into high availability if they support, an HA pair or something like that, right? So once all that plumbing is done, then you're ready to configure to handle the application traffic or whatever that's is intended to do at the higher level, right? So once it's serving the application, everything's all well, you still need to monitor, right? Monitor the appliance itself and how it's functioning, as well as maybe monitoring the traffic or the application running on top of these or running through these appliances, right? What's their performance like? And then at some point, there has to be a change that has to be made, right? Could be as upgrading the software in the box, or changes in the application that require changes on the appliance, or as far as maybe doing an RMA in the box, right? At which point you have to start way back at the bootstrap stage and go back to the whole cycle again. So let me jump over to what we provide in our tool chain. So number one are the cloud templates, right? These are templates or codes that we've built, right? And they're available on GitHub as one point of entry, right? So it allows you to quickly, with a single press of a button even, right, to deploy big IP images in either public cloud or even in your private cloud, right? So this is just spin up a big IP, and of course I'm talking about the virtual big IP, right? And next is declarative onboarding. So this is you're assigning things like management IP, self IP, right? HA config. All right, so all the plumbing stuff. AS3 or is API for you to configure L4, L7 services, right? Configuring your virtual server, right? It's one that's most come to mind, right? API services gateway. This is a little bit of a interesting thing here. Is for an organization that's very heavily invested into DevOps and using API, we provide a standalone container that runs our LXI control services, right? So that it is independent from TMOS or from the big IP versions, right? So as you upgrade the big IP on the back end, we often, make some changes to our API, either adding additional feature or making modification changes. And we don't want that to break the existing automation calls, right? So by having this API services gateway in between in between TMOS or the big IP and the automation platform, you have you gain a little bit of independence there and free the big IP from doing upgrade and leave the correction done by the API service gateway. Finally, telemetry streaming. This is to normalize and consolidate or conglomerate all the data and then push it to a consumer, right? You're gonna see some of these demo when Jermaine does his piece. All right, so let's circle back to the previous diagram to see where all this fits, right? So cloud templates, think of that as the bootstrap portion, right? And this will be for the virtual edition, right? We're talking about automation. Much of automation has to rely on the virtual editions because of its agility. Declarative onboarding is what would map to like a device onboard. AS3 would map to where you configure your L4, L7 services, and telemetry will be where you do your monitoring. All right, so why is F5, why F5 and Ansible together? Number one, Ansible itself is a simple tool to use. The integration is also very simple because we have a powerful, comprehensive set of APIs, right? That the API can do everything that needs to be done on the big IP platform, and Ansible can just the automation platform has full function and feature through the API, right? So that's makes the integration simple for a simple to use platform, and that's why together, like I said, it's powerful because the automation platform has the ability to do full configuration on the device itself, right? And then agentless, again, back to the simple, right? No agent, no software needs to be installed on the big IP, right? Our native API services is all that is needed for Ansible to do its thing. The use case, I mean, your imagination is a limit on use cases, right? But I'll give you the most obvious one, the most one that's can be used is bringing up a virtual server, right? Without an automation platform, for those new to the big IP, bringing up a full working virtual server actually it's not very simple, right? Because first you got to add in the nodes, maybe monitor the node, bring up, put the node into a pool, monitor the pool, put them into a virtual server, create a client's SSL, server-side SSL. It's probably about, you'd probably be jumping about 5 to 7 to 10 screens probably, right? But using an Ansible, it'd just be a single click, right? On to make a call to create a virtual server. And maybe all that the user would really need is to put in the name of the virtual server or the name of the application, right? And the automation platform will take care of the rest, right? So it's really abstract the complexity of the big IP from the end user. I want to take this slide to kind of give a little bit compare and contrast, or just kind of how AS3 and Ansible complement each other, right? So AS3 capability is really focused on the big IP, right? It's its own product, so we're looking inward. How do we provide full capabilities and expose that in the most simple way to the automation platform? Ansible itself is needs to take care of a much larger ecosystem, right? So you're automating, you're orchestrating, right? So you're not orchestrating just one thing, right? You want to orchestrate multiple things together, right? And big IP will be just one of the components, right? But we want to abstract the complexity and make it easy. The abstraction comes from our declarative API, right? So it is the automation platform would essentially just need a single call to the big IP describing its end state, right? And let the big IP figure out how to build that end state for you, right? If you could do it on Ansible too, but it will be a setup imperative cost, right? You have to, like I said, build the nodes, right? Create the nodes, create a pool, and so on and so on, right? It's step by step.
So real quick, you'll notice if you do some search on F5 and Ansible, you'll see two sets of labs. One like with the declarative where Young was talking about, where we're building nodes, pools, and then stepping up to building a virtual server. And those are separate Ansible calls to make them. And then you'll see this newer version with AS3 where we're just saying, hey, build me a virtual server with our IPs and these are the members, right? Or even fancier ones where, hey, go use service discovery and identify who we want to send this traffic to on the back end. So yeah, you'll see those two different labs out there.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's good to do the one lab where you know, without the AS3 calls, you get more insight into how things are done, right? But I should also mention that the F5 Ansible relationship has gone pretty far back, and you know, at one point I know we're the leading contributor in terms of number of modules into Ansible. I just checked the other day and it looks like we're at like 198, you know, so reaching 200 modules on the Galaxy side. So that's probably, I would think that's still the highest contributor out there. Some additional tools. Jermaine, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let you take the next few slides to talk about these tools.
Okay, you can move forward. So BigIQ is our management platform. You a lot of times would bring your BigIP into BigIQ. You'd onboard your applications into BigIQ, and that generally happens as two different things. You bring up your BigIP, bring it into BigIQ, put your application on your BigIP, bring it in. Well, what we're doing here is we're doing this all in one shot by making our call to BigIQ and say, hey, onboard my devices, go ahead and configure them for HA, and then we can tell BigIQ to onboard our application, and then we can get our analytics all in one shot, not multiple shots at configuring different devices. The beauty here is too, if you're using multi-cloud or you're doing a cloud deployment, you can store all of your licensing on BigIQ. If there's a problem with one of your cloud devices, you blow it away, redo the license from BigIQ without having to reach back to support or anyone else to have a man in the middle to help you with the licensing issue, right? That's a tremendous benefit in an environment where you're paving and nuking on a high rate, right? Some of the tools that are actually behind the scenes of this lab, we won't go into all of them. GitHub, we'll talk about a little bit. Visual Studio Code is it's a platform for us to build our AS3 declarations on. There is a way for you to validate your declaration. We won't really get into it, but that's a really powerful tool for us building declarations. And you can also send the declarations either directly to the appliance, to BigIQ, or you can make a call to Ansible directly. There's some really cool modules being developed for Visual Studio Code around F5, and I think have a list that shows that. It's called Fast Templates, or if you do a search for F5 and it's Fast Templates in the Visual Studio Code marketplace. Postman, a RESTful API client. It's actually used as a part of this lab, but we kind of kept that out in the backgrounds there. And what we're doing with Postman is we go ahead and we push configurations from our source control, our GitHub repository that provisions Ansible Tower with the playbooks that we're going to see and use coming up. It can also be used to push declarations to the BigIP or push them to BigIQ to configure the BigIP, right? So that's Postman. And next.
Just so, you know, every week we ask our attendees to help us by filling out the survey. We should have it. The link here is in the chat, so if you don't mind, take a few seconds. I think it's just like five questions or so. One of the things that would really help us is for you to let us know what the topics that you would like for us to cover, in the future. things that you're interested in hearing, right? So this really helped the team build out the content and then present it to everyone back here. Right? So let me just cover some topics that we're having coming up in a couple of weeks. We're sticking with the automation theme. So next up, we have automating BIGIP with Terraform. Right, so that's if you're interested in that, please attend at the same time every week, same bad time, same bad channel, right? 1 p.m. After that is introduce.
It looks like, yeah, this audio froze there for a second. So there's a list of courses that we're going to do for Wednesday coming up. There on the, we'll send out the list there that you can track and follow on our webinar Wednesday page. You back, Young?
Yes. I'm not sure what happened there.
It's probably because so many of us are now working from home. We're consuming all the bandwidth, right? So at this point, we're ready to jump into the lab phase. So I'll start sharing here. All right. So now you should see my desktop. We have a couple different labs we're going to walk through. First is we're just going to just look over Ansible Tower and just get a feel for the environment that we're looking at. So here I've logged into Ansible Tower, and you start generally when you log in, you show up at the dashboard here, and you can see how many hosts are configured, see status of past jobs, inventories that are configured, projects, and we'll kind of jump in and start with projects. Projects is the place that you generally begin with bringing whatever configuration or job that you're going to build or operate with into Ansible Tower. We already have a preloaded project called Automation Toolchain project. And as I said before, that project was actually loaded with Postman, and we use Postman to configure this. So we'll just take a look at this here. So we have a name, organization, those are things that are customizable. What we want to take and hone in here is the SCM type. This is how we brought this project in, and we have multiple options. You can have a manual option where you have files and repositories stored on your Ansible Tower box or some other flat file location, or you can use reversion control type software, Git or Subversion, to pull the project in from. This one's actually coming from GitHub. And here's the URL here for this project. This project has multiple phases to it. We're going to do 3 of the phases. There's a project where it will just deploy everything at once, but we'll get into that a little bit more. One of the things we can do here is this feature here is update reversion. So if you make a change to the GitHub repository, this would ensure that it gets propagated before you run your playbook here. And so once we got a project installed, there are templates that are components of a particular project that you can run. And here we have a number of templates that are installed with our installation. Our first one is basically installing the ATC toolchain. Those are the components that Young talked about, the automation toolchain, the declarative onboarding. There's the AS3 module that has to be loaded, and the telemetry streaming module. So those can all be run from here. Our declarative onboarding script will actually build out and communicate with the declarative onboarding RPM that we loaded and do our baseline configurations here. Things that are configurable here, Young kind of mentioned a few of them, self IPs, host names. This is also where you would put your config template, or sorry, your STIG or device hardening templates, your warning banners, all of that can be applied here. Full deployment, that's going to deploy all the components that we're going to cover. Telemetry streaming was our monitoring capability that can all be deployed, can be deployed also. And AS3 is actually building an application. So for the project, I'll actually step back just a second. So we have an option right away to just go ahead and get the latest version of our project, and we'll see that in flight. We'll move to the job status. So any job that you kick off, you get to watch and see what's happening here. Green light obviously means it's good. Red, something happened, and we can investigate by clicking on the project here. So you get a status of a recap of what happened, right? So we see that 2 items were changed, 13 were skipped. That's the item potency here, where something happened earlier. We don't need to change it now. So next step, we'll go ahead and deploy our ATC toolchain. And we'll take a look at the ATC toolchain. Extra variables, we'll talk about that. They're generally variables for configuring different components, whether you want to put an IP address for a virtual server. You could change credentials here, like username and passwords. This is something you can determine whether you want to present this to a user or not, but just showing you that you can change variables on the fly, right? We could actually reach in and configure those, but we'll leave that for now. Here's the playbooks that we can pull down. We'll stick with the default playbook. They're a little hard to see because of my screen zoomed out, but we'll stick with the typical one there. And we can hit the launch button. So we get a status. This should change to running. And then we'll see a status of what's happening with our job in this window here. And we can follow along with that and see these are different plays that are in our particular playbook that's happening, right? And we have names that were filled out for us to easily track the actions and activities that are happening within our play and what status they are. So once that's done, just to give you an idea, as these plays are run, it records the user that actually ran the play, when they ran it, and the status. So if there's a problem, say Jermaine made a mistake and we wanted to go back and figure out what playbook he ran, what time did he run it, we have all that. That's traceable for us. And you can view that under the jobs. You have the option of under schedule. If you want to run a job after hours and have it ready for you in the morning, you can schedule your job. So here we go. We have a successfully run our play here where we've installed the Automation Toolchain. And we're next to the fun part. Let's go ahead and take a look at our BIGIP, see what state they're in, and move from there. We'll log in. Actually, start me typing. So we are at our provisioning warning. We have a BIGIP that has no license. It's not operational. Take a look at BIGIP number 2. Same situation here. So we're going to rectify the situation by pushing our declaration to the BIGIP. We'll go back to our template. And we're going to just launch this one from here by clicking the rocket ship. Similar situation, status is going to change depending, running, and we'll see status. So this particular template here, which is available to you to take a look at and modify to your own network, this group of plays, this is designed to work in conjunction designed to work where you can run all of these at the same time. And you'll notice here that there's a pause for 200 seconds. That is to allow declarative onboarding to finish all the work that it needs to do, and then it would run the AS3 module. If we didn't have this pause in here and we just cram the AS3 module on top, it would time out because it was waiting for declarative onboarding to finish its work. What we'll do here is, so we don't have to wait for this to finish. I've already configured or ran through this declarative onboarding, and we'll take a look at what the finished product will look like. But that's why you would see this particular pause here. Generally wouldn't be required if you were just doing just a plain declaration here. So we'll log in here. So we see now, post running the declarative onboarding script, we have a big IP that's online, it's in sync with this big IP. But at this point, we don't have any applications deployed. We'll just see all status there. We'll go back to Ansible Tower. We'll take a look at our templates here. And we will run the AS3 deployment. This is going to deploy an application for us. Launch. We'll wait for this application to deploy. I'm going to open up another console session. We're waiting for our status to show successful. While we're waiting on the status here, so I know that a lot of business drivers are for automation, but a number of the engineers within F5, we're heavily utilizing automation just so we can build these labs, because we don't want to spend all our day, going through the task of building pools and virtual servers out. So you'll notice that in more labs, you'll see virtualization being utilized. The Ansible Access Lab heavily utilizes automation to build out the components and things like that. This particular lab, before we go to take a look at the application, it's available to you to actually use and test. You have to reach out to your SE, and we can spin that up for you to take a look at. So at this point, let's jump into our big IP and let's see what we have.
So, hey, Jermaine.
Yes.
So I see, just because I see a lot of tasks in the Ansible window there, AS3 is still sending a single API call, right? So it's a declarative package configuration that it's sending. So this would be an example of a declarative, declarative example.
Yes. So this lab has a lot of checks built into it to verify status and to rerun tasks if there's not a status. So this is a great place for you. If you wanted to get into automation, you can take this apart and build off of this, right? Because the checks and balances are already built in. So generally, if I'm spinning up something really fast, I may not have as many checks and the things that are here with this to ensure that things run correctly. But this is a great template for that. And that's why you see so many tasks, right? Another thing too, extra tasks are in here are for grabbing tokens and logging into the appliance to run the actual AS3 call. Okay, so when AS3 deploys an application, it deploys it in a partition. So we'll move to the partition, and now we see our applications available here. We'll just copy and we'll take a look at the application. And here's our finished product here. So this concludes this portion. There are others, well, this particular lab that I wanted to show. If there are any questions, please let us know, type them in. I'm going to prep one more lab that I want to show. This is going to include BIGIQ. Well, actually, sorry, I won't prep that one. It is going down. Okay. So what I wanted to show was I have a BIGIQ lab where we present a survey form where a particular user can fill out basic information, the name of the application, the virtual server IP address, and the nodes and or pool members, right? And then it would deploy that through BIGIQ, and then BIGIQ would have the application, and you could then track and see the stats on the application right inside BIGIQ. But unfortunately, it's shutting down. Sorry about that. We can take a quick look here and take a look at the GitHub repository and just show you some of the code that's in here that may be good to see. And actually, I'll share this in the chat in just a second. So we'll take a look at the Ansible Tower deployment and then the module 5.
Hey, Jermaine, when you get a chance, you also have a question in chat.
Actually, let's shoot for that.
Adding search to the VIP pool.
I'm sorry, I can't see the chat. I don't have it up right quick, but if you could repeat the question real quick.
Yeah, I'll read it off to you. How about adding the search to the VIP pool or VIP pool, et cetera? Can you automate that portion, or is that still old fashioned?
Nope, that can be a part of your declaration, right? The certificate you would just define the cert in the code here. Actually, we'll see if I can find you the right place here. Let's take a look at the files. Actually, sorry, we have a role. This is, may get lost in here. This is a bit dangerous. We're off the script here. So this is a sample declaration, and there'd be a portion inside this declaration here that we can actually deploy the cert, and that's available under the AS3 documentation there. And you can also do the application certificate, and you can do device certificates. The application certificate will be under AS3. The device certificate would be under declarative onboarding. And I'll move the chat window here. So do we have any other questions?
No other questions, but I think you answered that question. Anybody else would like to see anything else while Jermaine is kind of going through this? Is there anything you're interested in how you can automate it? So close to the chat or the Q&A. Happy to answer anything.
And once again, I'm sorry about the BIGIQ one. The time, I didn't pay attention to that. It went to sleep on me, but I'm willing to show that at a later time if you guys would like, or we can reach out to the SEs and they can show that.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, this is part of the Agility Labs, and those are being offered by F5, where you can register for some of them. This one in particular is not, but many of the other Agility Labs are being offered where you guys can register for them. So the other part of that is if you would like to do this lab, you can ask your account team to run it for you, allow you to have access, and you can run it in our cloud environment.
Yeah, at the end of the presentation, there's a resource link, and the last link on there is a link to the lab guide. So if you want to do any of the labs in there, we can provide them to you as well.
Yeah, so then just go for this lab, everyone. There's a lot of other labs around WAF, OWASP Top 10, Zero Trust, Anywhere Proxy, automation. You know, most topics you can think of, we have a lab for. So, you know, if there's something like that you're interested in, look through that those lab guides and ask your account team if you can get a hold of them and run them.
Share the GitHub repository now for this lab. And one other. All right, Young started off well with all those food stories right at lunchtime. It's unfair.
So I think that's is that the end of the, are there any more slides, Young?
No, actually, I think I got cut off at right before the resource link. So which is, you know, no one's gonna look at that. But you send that out. Lots of good resources there that I posted the link to. My apologies earlier. I'm not sure what happened with my home internet.
Okay, sounds good. And once again, everyone, thank you for joining, and please stick around following the end of the webinar. As Young mentioned, there'll be a survey, and if you could fill that out, that would be fantastic. It really helps us to creating this content, what's relevant to you, and what topics you want to hear. Any closing remarks by anyone? Are we good? Okay.
Good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Have a good day. Take care.